The cameras were rolling, the lights were bright, and the studio audience was buzzing with excitement. It was just another live TV show, or so everyone thought. The host, confident and full of bravado, had prepared his big moment. He believed he could corner Muhammad Ali, the greatest boxer of all time, with a question designed to embarrass him in front of millions. The smirk on his face told the audience everything. He thought he was in control. "Let's see if even you can handle this one," the host said, leaning forward, clearly enjoying the attention. The laughter of the audience echoed through the studio, a mix of nerves and excitement. Everyone loved a little tension, but no one could have predicted what would happen next. Muhammad Ali, sitting calmly in his chair, didn't flinch. His posture was relaxed, almost casual. He wasn't just a man in a suit sitting in front of cameras. He was a master of presence, a man who had faced thousands in the ring and won. The audience could feel it. There was a quiet power radiating from him. Where the host was loud, Ali was serene. Where the host tried to provoke, Ali simply observed. The host fired the first question sharp and pointed, meant to put Ali on the defensive. "People say you're all talk outside the ring. Can you back up your words, or is it just a show?" he asked, his tone dripping with condescension. The audience chuckled nervously, waiting for the champion to stumble. But Ali didn't stumble. He didn't even blink. A faint smile tugged at the corner of his lips, not arrogance, but awareness. He had seen this act before, people trying to belittle him, testing him. But Ali wasn't just a boxer, he was a strategist, a master of words, and a performer of life itself. And then, in those few seconds that felt like an eternity, something incredible happened. Ali leaned slightly forward, his eyes locking onto the host's calm but piercing. His voice was steady, confident, and sharp enough to cut through the laughter. Whatever he said next didn't just answer the question, it shut down the studio entirely. Every chuckle, every whisper, every confident smirk disappeared. The audience froze. The host froze. Even the cameras seemed to pause. No one in that studio would ever forget the silence. And in that moment, it became clear. Muhammad Ali didn't need to throw a punch to win. His words alone could command a room, and anyone who underestimated him, even on live television, was about to learn a lesson they'd never forget. It was a crisp, busy evening in the television studio, and the energy in the air was electric. Cameras rolled, lights flashed, and the audience buzzed with excitement, eager for entertainment. The host, dressed impeccably in a sharp suit, strutted across the stage like he owned the place. Confidence oozed from every movement, but it was the type of confidence that comes from arrogance, not skill. He believed he had the perfect setup to embarrass someone on live TV. Tonight that target was none other than Muhammad Ali, the man who had become a legend inside and outside the boxing ring. The host had spent days preparing his questions, rehearsing every line, every jab of sarcasm, and every sly remark. He had done his research, reading interviews, watching past matches, and trying to find weaknesses in Ali's public persona. In his mind, he had Ali figured out. He was certain that when he posed his clever, provocative questions, the champion would either stumble or be reduced to awkward, nervous chatter. The studio audience, sensing the tension, leaned forward in their seats, eager to witness the showdown. Then Ali arrived. Unlike the host, he made no grand entrance, no entourage, no dramatic gestures. He walked in quietly, wearing a simple outfit, exuding a calm confidence that immediately drew every eye in the room. Jeans, a casual jacket, and a faint smile, the kind of smile that doesn't reveal much, but promises a lot. He carried himself with the poise of someone who had faced far greater challenges than a TV host's clever questions. Ali sat down, relaxed, his eyes scanning the room with the sharp precision of a fighter. It was clear from the moment he arrived that this was not just a man. This was a presence. The studio buzzed with whispered conversations. Who was this man who didn't need pomp or drama to command attention? People who had seen him on television before still felt the weight of his reputation in person. The host, sensing the audience's shifting attention, straightened in his chair. He was used to controlling the room, but something about Ali made the usual rules feel irrelevant. The host leaned forward, ready to strike with his first question, a question he was sure would corner Ali. "People say you're all talk outside the ring," he said, smirking, "that your words are bigger than your actions. Can you prove them wrong?" The audience chuckled nervously, expecting Ali to falter or give a rehearsed response. Some laughed out loud, eager to see the champion stumble. But Ali didn't flinch, not even slightly. He listened carefully, his gaze steady, absorbing every word. There was no rush, no panic, no hint of insecurity. Where the host tried to create tension, Ali exuded calm control. Every gesture, every blink, every slight tilt of his head conveyed intelligence, awareness, and preparation. It was in these quiet seconds that the real setup became clear. Ali wasn't going to play the host's game. He wasn't going to react out of ego or anger. Instead, he was waiting, analyzing, and preparing to deliver a response that would change the energy in the room entirely. The stage was set. The host thought he was in control, but he was about to discover that he had walked into a trap he didn't even know existed, the trap of underestimating a legend. The cameras continued rolling, capturing every twitch of the host's smirk and every subtle shift in Ali's calm posture. The audience, sensing the tension, leaned closer. Everyone in that studio, from the sound engineers to the front row fans, could feel that something unforgettable was about to happen. And when Ali finally spoke, the entire room would realize that his power wasn't in his fists, but in his mind, his words, and his unwavering presence. Before Ali answered, the audience held its collective breath. Every eye was on him. Every camera was rolling. And in that silent, electric moment, it was already clear whatever came next would go down in history. The host cleared his throat, his smirk unwavering, or so he thought. Cameras focused on him, audience eyes wide with anticipation. He had rehearsed this moment countless times, imagining the laughter that would follow if Ali faltered. The question he posed next was designed to embarrass, to provoke, and to assert dominance over the man who had become a global icon. "Some people say boxing is just a sport," he said, his tone dripping with condescension. "But you've been out of the ring for a while. Aren't you afraid you've lost your edge, that maybe all the talk was bigger than the fight itself?" The audience tittered nervously. A few chuckled outright, imagining Ali stumbling, fumbling for a polite reply, or offering a weak defense. The host leaned forward, confident, imagining his victory. He believed he was in control, but he had no idea what was coming. Ali, calm as ever, didn't respond immediately. Instead, he let a brief pause hang in the air, a pause that felt like an eternity. The camera captured his faint smile, the glint in his eyes, and the way he shifted his weight, leaning slightly forward as if measuring the words carefully before releasing them. There was no rush, no flinching, no defensiveness. Where the host expected uncertainty, Ali radiated absolute confidence. Finally, Ali spoke. His voice was smooth, deliberate, and calm, yet carried a weight that silenced the room instantly. "You know," he said, tilting his head slightly, "I've spent my life in the ring, and I've faced opponents who were bigger, faster, stronger than me. And do you know what I learned?" The audience leaned in. The host froze mid-smirk, sensing that the moment had shifted. "I learned that strength isn't about looking tough or scaring people with words. Strength," Ali continued, "comes from knowing who you are and never letting anyone else define you." A hush fell over the studio. The laughter, the smirks, the confident chatter, all of it disappeared. The host's carefully crafted demeanor faltered. His words stuck in his throat. Cameras caught the faint tremor in his hand as he tried to regain composure. But it was too late. Ali's presence was absolute, his words like a punch that landed without contact, yet hit harder than anything the host could throw. The silence was deafening. Even the production crew paused, unsure whether to cut to commercial or let the moment linger. The audience was spellbound. Every person in the studio felt it. They were witnessing something extraordinary, something far beyond entertainment. Ali continued, his tone gentle but firm. "You see, talking big and trying to embarrass someone may work on some, but not on those who are grounded, not on those who have faced fear, pain, and doubt every single day. I don't need to prove myself to anyone who doesn't understand the fight I've fought. Not just in the ring, but in life." The host swallowed hard. His carefully rehearsed remarks, meant to humiliate Ali, had evaporated into the air. The audience could sense the shift. The host was no longer in control. For the first time, his smirk faltered, his confidence cracked. The man he thought he would humiliate was untouchable, not because of fists, but because of mind and presence. Ali leaned back slightly, eyes scanning the room, letting the impact of his words sink in. The silence stretched for several seconds, each tick of the clock amplifying the weight of what had just happened. The audience's jaws were tight, whispers were muted, and even the camera operators seemed mesmerized. It was the kind of silence that fills history books, the kind that makes a moment unforgettable. And then Ali delivered the final blow, not physical, but a verbal knockout. "Remember this," he said, voice calm but unwavering. "Real power doesn't need to yell. Real strength doesn't need to prove itself to anyone. And respect is earned, not demanded." Every eye in the studio was fixed on him. Every soul in the room understood Muhammad Ali had just shut down the host in a way that no one expected, and no one would ever forget. The host, humbled and speechless, finally leaned back, his earlier arrogance replaced with awe. The audience erupted, not in laughter, but in whispers of disbelief and admiration. Cameras captured Ali's quiet smile, a subtle reminder that true champions don't need to fight everyone. Sometimes silence and wisdom are the deadliest weapons of all. In that moment, the studio had learned a lesson. It wasn't the camera, the audience, or the loud words that defined power. It was presence, confidence, and humility. And Muhammad Ali had just proven it live, on television for the entire world to see. The studio was still frozen in stunned silence. Muhammad Ali had just delivered a verbal knockout that no one saw coming, and for a few heartbeats, it seemed as if time itself had paused. Cameras rolled, capturing every expression, the host's faltering confidence, the audience's wide-eyed shock, and the subtle, knowing smile on Ali's face. It was one of those rare moments where the world outside the television screen could almost feel the electricity in the room. The host sat back, struggling to compose himself. His mind raced, trying to recover, trying to grasp what had just happened. Every rehearsed joke, every clever remark, every subtle jab he had planned had been dismantled in seconds, not by anger, but by sheer presence, calmness, and razor-sharp wit. For the first time in his career, he felt exposed, vulnerable, and powerless, and everyone in that studio sensed it. Then Ali leaned forward, his eyes sweeping across the audience. His voice calm and deliberate, cut through the silence like a knife. "You know," he said softly, almost conversationally, "sometimes people think they understand a fight because they've watched a few rounds or read a few articles. But understanding comes from experience. Understanding comes from respect, and respect is earned, not assumed." The murmurs began quietly at first. Some of the audience members whispered to each other, still processing what had just occurred. "Did he just? That was incredible. I've never seen anything like this." Their voices, hushed and awed, seemed to grow louder as realization settled in. The host, who had been the center of attention just moments before, now felt the weight of Ali's words pressing down on him. Ali stood up slowly, exuding calm authority. He didn't shout. He didn't gloat. Yet, with every movement, he made it unmistakably clear who held the power in that room. The audience was leaning forward, holding their breath, waiting for the final revelation. And then it came. A producer stepped onto the set, carrying a set of official documents. Cameras swiveled to capture every movement. Ali took them, flipping through them carefully, giving the impression of casual interest, though every eye knew this was no ordinary paperwork. "You see," Ali said, finally turning back to the host, "sometimes people judge you by what they see. They think they know you. But the truth is they rarely do." He handed the documents back to the producer, and a subtle shift in the studio's energy made it impossible to ignore. Ali had more authority than anyone in the room realized. Then came the confirmation, subtle at first, but undeniable. An announcement over the PA system made the revelation crystal clear. Ali wasn't just the guest on the show, he had a direct stake in the production company itself. He had the power to make decisions, influence direction, and ensure respect where it was due. The host's face went pale as the realization hit him. The man he had tried to humiliate, the man he thought was just another celebrity with charm and talk, was in fact someone who could control his career, his reputation, and his platform. Gasps rippled through the studio. Cameras captured the host's stunned expression, his hands shaking slightly as he reached for water he didn't need. The audience erupted not in laughter, but in utter astonishment. Every jaw was dropped. Every whisper carried awe and disbelief. The studio, which had moments ago been filled with nervous energy and laughter at Ali's supposed vulnerability, was now filled with a deep, reverent silence that spoke volumes. Ali smiled, the kind of smile that didn't mock, didn't boast, but commanded respect. He leaned slightly back, allowing the revelation to settle fully, letting everyone, host, audience, and crew alike, grasp the lesson in real time. This wasn't about fame, it wasn't about appearances. It was about authentic power, humility, and earned respect. In that instant, the host understood something crucial. He had underestimated Ali, as so many had before. And the audience, both live and watching from home, realized that the true champion was more than a boxer. He was a man who could dominate a room with words, presence, and integrity alone. Ali's revelation didn't just end the segment, it transformed it. People in the studio, who had come expecting entertainment, had witnessed a lesson in respect, humility, and quiet authority. And as Ali walked off the set, the cameras capturing his every step, it was clear. The real power wasn't in the spotlight, the questions, or the smirk of a host. It was in the calm, measured strength of a true legend. By the end, every person in that studio, from the host to the audience, would carry the memory of that moment for the rest of their lives. Ali had shown, in one unforgettable revelation, that the strongest punches are sometimes delivered without ever touching anyone. The studio was still buzzing, though the sound was no longer louder. It was quiet awe. Cameras continued rolling, capturing the aftermath of the moment that had just unfolded. Muhammad Ali had not only answered the host's provocations, but completely dismantled the facade of arrogance in front of the entire nation. Every eye in the room was on him, waiting to see what he would do next. Would he gloat? Would he leave immediately? Or would he deliver a final lesson that no one could forget? Ali remained calm, almost serene. His presence alone seemed to command the room. The host, on the other hand, was visibly shaken. His confidence, so carefully curated over years of live television, had crumbled in seconds. He had underestimated Ali not just as a boxer, but as a man whose wisdom, wit, and presence could command respect even without raising a fist. For the first time, the host understood the difference between power that demands attention and power that earns it. Ali looked around the studio, his gaze pausing on those who had been laughing, mocking, or doubting him. He spoke softly, yet every word cut through the tension with precision. You see, it's easy to talk big when you think you're in control, but real control, real strength, comes from humility, patience, and understanding. And respect isn't something you take, it's something you give and earn. The audience, still recovering from the silence, began to murmur. Some were recording on their phones, knowing they had just witnessed history. Others exchanged wide-eyed glances, realizing the host had been humbled in front of them. The host himself could hardly speak, and when he tried, his words came out in stammered fragments. Ali didn't need to correct him, didn't need to lecture, his calm authority did all the work. Moments later, Ali rose from his chair. The studio lights glinted off the polished floor, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch across the room, symbolizing the weight of his presence. He moved toward the exit slowly, deliberately, as if to give the audience time to absorb the full impact of what had just happened. The host tried to follow, perhaps to salvage his dignity, but Ali's silent confidence created a natural barrier. This was his moment, one he didn't need to fight for, one he didn't need to claim. As Ali reached the door, a few producers and crew members approached him cautiously. They whispered congratulations and admiration, acknowledging not just the victory on air, but the lesson imparted to everyone in the room. Ali nodded politely, accepting their respect with humility, a reminder that true champions handle admiration with grace, not arrogance. The host remained seated, staring at the empty spot where Ali had been moments ago. His face was pale, his posture slumped. For the first time, he understood what it meant to be humbled, not through insult or force, but through the sheer strength of character and presence. The audience could feel it too. What had begun as entertainment had become a masterclass in respect and power. Ali's final words lingered in the air long after he had left the studio. Remember, strength is not just about what you can do to others, it's about what you can do with yourself. Influence, power, respect, they aren't given because of fame, money, or skill alone. They're given because people see your integrity, your courage, and your humility. Live that way, and you'll never have to prove yourself to anyone. The cameras, still rolling, captured the host slowly realizing the truth. He had been confident, smug, and arrogant, yet in one encounter, he had learned the most valuable lesson of all: true power does not shout. True strength does not demand recognition. True respect is earned quietly, patiently, and without fanfare. By the end of the broadcast, the studio was filled with a new kind of energy, one of respect, awe, and inspiration. Ali had left, but his presence lingered, reminding everyone that greatness is measured not just by victories in the ring, but by victories of character, integrity, and wisdom. And for the host, the lesson would stay with him forever, a humbling, unforgettable reminder that you can't fake humility, and you can't underestimate a true champion. Muhammad Ali had walked out quietly, but the silence he left behind spoke louder than any applause. The studio, the audience, and the nation had witnessed not just a man, but a living legend who embodied strength, respect, and honor in every word and every action. The lights in the studio dimmed slightly as the cameras continued rolling, capturing the aftermath of a moment that would soon go down in history. Muhammad Ali had left the stage, but his presence lingered like a shadow that refused to disappear. The host, once smug and overconfident, now sat frozen, humbled not by fists or anger, but by the sheer force of character, wisdom, and calm authority. And the audience, both in the studio and watching from home, felt it too, a lesson more powerful than any punch Ali had ever thrown. For years, people had admired Ali for his victories in the ring, for his athletic brilliance, and for his fearless persona. But that evening, the nation saw a different kind of champion. One whose true strength was not measured by how hard he could hit, but by how much respect he commanded without demanding it. He had shown that confidence alone isn't enough. It must be paired with integrity, humility, and awareness. The moral was clear. Respect isn't something you give because someone is famous, rich, or powerful. It's something you offer to every human being, regardless of status or perception. Ali had demonstrated this perfectly. The host, who had tried to belittle him, had underestimated him, and in doing so, revealed a universal truth: the people we look down on today may very well be the ones who teach us the most important lessons tomorrow. In that quiet aftermath, the studio was transformed. The staff, the audience, and even the host carried a new energy, a newfound awareness of what it meant to truly respect another human being. Ali's words had done more than silence a host. They had shifted perspectives, changed attitudes, and reminded everyone of the power of humility. Even as Ali left the building, there was a ripple effect. Conversations sparked in households across the nation. Did you see how calm he was? Did you notice how the host couldn't recover? That's what true confidence looks like. Ali had delivered a lesson for the ages: true strength doesn't need to dominate others to prove its worth. Real power isn't shown through arrogance or loud declarations. It's quiet, measured, and earned over time through actions, character, and respect. And it didn't stop there. This story, replayed countless times on social media and television, inspired people to reflect on their own lives. How often do we judge others too quickly? How often do we assume authority or intelligence comes with appearance or noise? Ali reminded the world that wisdom and strength often reside in calm, humble people, those who don't need to shout to be heard. So here's the takeaway: the next time you encounter someone who seems small, quiet, or underestimated, pause before dismissing them. Remember Ali's lesson from that live broadcast: the person you think is powerless may very well be the one who changes the room, and maybe even your life. Muhammad Ali didn't just win a verbal battle that day. He won hearts, inspired respect, and taught a timeless lesson about humility, presence, and integrity. That is the mark of a true champion. Not fame, not fortune, not even skill alone. Character and respect are the ultimate victory. Type respect in the comments if you believe true strength comes from humility and wisdom, not arrogance. Share where you're watching from. I want to hear how Ali's lessons inspire people all over the world. And remember, greatness isn't just what you do when people are watching. It's how you treat others when you think no one is paying attention. Muhammad Ali left the stage that day not with a shout or a show, but with a silence louder than any cheer. A silence that spoke volumes about what it truly means to be a legend.